liberal Zionism is infinitely more dangerous than conservative Zionism because you want to see the wolf. You don't want the wolf in sheep's clothing. A lot of people can see one way of this being done. When you have somebody as detestable as Randy Fine, for example, saying the things that he says, stating the course that Israel should be on, that's unfortunate. But then you have somebody like Senator Sanders, who was supposed to be on the right side of history, who's supposed to be doing the right thing for humanity. And instead, this is how he responds on Al Jazeera Plus.
Among Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza are showing that they're increasingly in favor of a one-state solution with equal rights for Israelis and Palestinians alike and equal citizenship. Is that something you believe could happen, or is that something you support?
No, I don't. I mean, I think if that happens, then that would be the end of the state of Israel.
And unfortunately, I support the state of Israel, even though I know it's not very popular. But I have to say, the state of Israel, it's been good to me. And I lived on a kibbutz, and it was a good time. And now I think it's definitely necessary to continue it. All I'm going to do, which I have continued to do for the longest time, is continue to point the finger at Netanyahu and his government, the people of Israel, even though they're even more crazy than Netanyahu. We'll forgive them because we'll just put in a better government. Better people will be in charge, and then it won't be such a problem. No, Bernie, it is a problem. It's a legacy-defining problem, whether you like it or not. All the hard work that you've put in, the millions of people that you inspired, it's all for naught because you can't get right on this issue. And sometimes it's only one issue. One issue can define them all. And this, to me, is the issue that will define you. You need to answer this very critical question, Bernie Sanders. What makes you better than Randy Fine or Debbie Wasserman Schultz when it comes to the issue of Israel if you believe in the genocidal state? You really think a two-state solution is going to solve this problem? You really think that at this point you can't see what's going on here? Are you that much in denial? I mean, I understand you were born, in the Stone Age, but at some point you have to evolve. At some point you either have to get with reality or get out of the way. And this is going to be a critical issue for anybody in the Democratic Party who even thinks about running for president in 2028. Because let me tell you right now, what is going to happen in the GOP? Either Thomas Massie or Tucker Carlson are going to run for president on a libertarian-esque America First agenda that is against Israel, full stop. Where do you think the populist energy is going to go? It sure as hell is not going to go to you or to AOC or to Ro Khanna or anyone else that even attempts to split the difference, because there is no splitting of the difference. This is also why when they come out and vehemently reject the idea of having any support from AIPAC, that's just a distraction. If you're not talking about the Israel lobby in its totality, yes, I said Randy Swine. You see, Bernie, you're going to end up just like this. This is your legacy if you continue down this road. In fact, I don't even think at this point you could not end up down this road, because to be this far along and to get this that wrong, completely wrong, is unacceptable beyond words. And don't think for a second this hasn't been going on for a while. But let Bernie finish out, and then we'll take it a step further.
And I support Israel's right to exist.
You do support Israel's right to exist, Bernie. And it's not like you haven't made this point clear before. Here he is a few months ago.
And critical of Benjamin Netanyahu for a very long time. But I want to ask you just about something that sometimes gets lost, especially right now when this debate is so emotional and so raw, which is, especially on the left, which is take Netanyahu out of this. Do you believe in the notion of Israel as a Jewish state?
Yeah, I do. For a lot of reasons.
Well, those reasons that I could come up with have nothing to do with whether or not the American people will ever understand, because the Jewish people, they are persecuted and they're not having a very good time. It's unfortunate, but if we don't have a Jewish state, then where are the Jews supposed to go to be safe? I don't know, Bernie. You were born before 1948, and apparently everything is always about what happened after the fact. You never address the fact that Dana Bash is one of the Dana Bash, Wolf Blitzer, Jake Tapper. They're all Jewish Zionists, and they're all employed by CNN. You see, when Fox News does it, everybody sees it coming because they're crude, they're inhumane, they don't care. So it's a much bigger problem. I want to give credit to somebody that we don't cross paths that much anymore politically. Krystal Ball and I know each other personally. We've always gotten along very well. But unfortunately, she and her husband, Kyle Kulinski, have made a very conscious effort that they are going to support the Democratic Party. When push comes to shove, end all be all, they will still fall into the vote blue no matter who category, believing that that is whatever it is that they believe is the reason for doing it, that they think that that is the safety squeeze. It doesn't work, and it never will work. But with that being said, I do want to give Krystal credit for this clip, and I'll tell you why. So Jen and I have pointed this out time and time again on our channel. When it comes to AIPAC, and even though AIPAC is pretty much split between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in terms of the candidates that they support, publicly and privately, there is a perception that they are much more of a Republican-leading conservative organization. That is the perception of what AIPAC actually is. Now, with AIPAC, you see them coming. On the other hand, we are living in a situation where when we're dealing directly with J Street and many of these other pro-Israel NGOs, there is a inherent danger in allowing the type of rhetoric that you will hear from liberal Zionists, whether it is Bernie Sanders, whether it is the founder of J Street. And the other thing I obviously want to give Krystal credit for, even though we obviously have vehemently disagreed with her channel's decision to remove James Lee, Ryan Grimm with Drop Site News does great work. Got to give him credit. And so the two of them had an interview with this gentleman, Mr. Benjamin, who is the founder of J Street. Listen carefully to the language that they use.
Gets treated differently because Israel is an ally, right? That's the reason we won't sell defensive weapons or really do anything to protect Palestinians or Iranian civilians as we're bombing their little girls' schools, or Lebanese civilians. One of the questions that I think the American people are asking, and I'm asking, is what are we getting out of this relationship? I view this more through a moral lens. I think Israel's committing a genocide as an apartheid state. I think it should be sanctioned the way South Africa was. I think that level of pressure should be applied to compel moral behavior. I think we should have international law. I think our willingness to observe and support the barbarism of Israel and Gaza has effectively destroyed international law. What do we get out of Israel being this key ally, given the fact that Israel has helped persuade the president to enter into this disastrous war, given the fact that Israel has helped to destroy international law? Why are we holding so tight to this alliance with an actor that is not only immoral, but has helped to foment a massive strategic disaster for the United States of America and the globe?
Well, I think what you're hearing me say is that the U.S. shouldn't be having that kind of a relationship with an Israel that is doing the things that you're outlining. This Israel under Benjamin Netanyahu, the things that it has done over these last 20 years, by and large, they have hurt American national interests.
You see it from Bernie. You are seeing it from Mr. Benjamin. Now, we'll see if Krystal pushes back or not, but this is always going to be the liberal Zionist talking point. It is one that they see as politically strategic and that it will work for them. And in the short run, it probably will. That this is a Netanyahu problem. This is a Gavir problem. This is a Smotrich problem. This isn't an Israel problem. Israel still has the right to exist. And that's what they're going to go with. Now, do I think it'll work in the short run, especially being that this is a blue wave year? Probably. But in the long run, it will fail. We have to continue to point out that this is the next step in the pro-Israel strategy. They are 1,000% going to get behind the Democrats in the midterms, and this is how they're going to do it. They're just going to sell it a different way. That is what is going to happen here. A huge part of their strategy is going to be talking like this. He's got more to say.
Want to see is a Middle East that ends these conflicts, provides Palestinians with an actual route to self-determination that begins to tap into the incredible opportunity Israel provides to the region to be a technological and economic engine of growth. We call it a 23-state solution. Can Israel become a functioning member of the region and work with all of its neighbors? The type of Israel under Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, and Smotrich that does what it did in Gaza, burning down the West Bank, fomenting religious warfare, convincing Donald Trump to go to war, that is not an asset to the United States, but it can be. When I say J Street is pro-Israel, we are advocating for a different future.
It just seems to me to require a sort of suspension of reality to imagine the Israel that you're talking about. For example, you said you expect there'll be a new government in place that isn't as extreme. Naftali Bennett, the critique he's had of Netanyahu with regard to the Iran war is that he wasn't brutal enough.
There is no reforming this genocidal state. There is no reforming this government. There is no reforming this ideology. It is a dead ideology in the eyes of anyone who is not just America first, but just an American period that has a brain. If you know anybody at this point that is still supporting the state of Israel, they are an enemy to the United States of America. And do not hold back on that statement. I don't care how scared people get if they hear that. This is our country and it is cratering and it will go down into the pits of hell with that genocidal state if we let them. They are trying to merge our military with theirs. How much worse can this get? Well, apparently it could get a lot worse. And the problem is that liberal Zios like Mr. Benjamin are going to try to soft sell it. That is what we are up against right now. The soft sell of Zionism in a kindler, gentler way. The Jews won't be safe without it. That's what they're trying to do. And unfortunately, for the short term, his style, especially with the amount of money that they're going to have behind them. Did you guys know that Mr. Senate candidate darling James Tallarico, who was the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate in the state of Texas, did you know he's already received $60,000 in campaign contributions from one of Miriam Adelson's NGOs? Well, now you know. As I said, and as Jenna said, we will not vote our way out of this. It won't happen. And if anything, the Democrats are going to create a sense of security around this issue for the more comfort-minded voter in this country. That once they're in charge, the adults will be in charge again, and things will go back to normal. There is no going back to normal. This is, we're done, period, end of story. Listen for more information that's critical here.
He's made plenty of his own racist, incendiary comments, whether it's with regard to Gaza or with regard to Arabs more broadly. If that's the moderate in Israel, it's just very hard to imagine without applying the kind of pressure like we applied and the globe applied to South Africa and without using international sanctions and compelling different behavior. If you're relying on the democratic vote of Israeli Jews, 82% of whom support the expulsion of residents of the Gaza Strip entirely, we're nowhere close to the universe that you would like to see.
I, don't necessarily agree. It is in Israel's long-term interest, and this is the case that J Street will continue to make, that Israel can only have a future worth it for the Jewish people if it compromises and allows there to be a Palestinian state. What it gets out of that is normalization of its relations with Saudi Arabia and the whole Gulf. It needs political leadership, and I will fight for it. I believe it's possible. I know there are examples in history of this happening. That's why we do the work that we do.
But
you've been attempting your so-called two-state solution since when? 1967? 1987 after the First Intifada? There was the Six-Day War. There was the assassinations. And whenever you got just close enough, as Arafat did, to getting that two-state solution, magically, it just doesn't happen. And the same thing will happen if Benjamin gets his way. They'll work on it. They'll get close. But think of it in a lot of ways, ladies and gentlemen, as the Mansion Cinema Fetterman effect. You'll get oh so close, so very, very close. And then it just won't happen. You'll be off by 1 vote. You'll be off by 2 votes. This is unacceptable because, again, this softens the blow. Softening the blow is so much more dangerous. So much more dangerous. That is why liberal Zionism, which doesn't really exist, but we are under the pretext that it does exist, because in their mind it does. And this is what they're trying to sell. And that's why we have to speak up about this in a very profound way.
at this point, when the reality of what Israel is doing on the ground is so different from what the liberal kind of vision for it is propping up that liberal vision of it, fueling a delusional level of support for the reality on the ground.
Only if one is not calling out that delusion. I do not spare any words in terms of describing just how awful these people are and what they're doing, how it violates every shred of my Jewish moral identity, everything that I've taught my kids about what it means to be a good person and follow the ethics and the morals of our people. I write about this every week. No one's giving up on the vision of what an America can and should be. I won't give up on the idea a state that is the national homeland of the Jewish people can also treat the other people who live there well and can live at peace with its neighbors, including a state for the Palestinian people. And the horrors of this last few years is actually a moment for Israelis to take a look and say, well, maybe it actually is time to try a non-Netanyahu path. I believe that this is a really important argument to make to people both in this country and that country.
So as you can see, the same argument is being made by anybody that is a part of these BS talking points. That's what this is. And he's still talking about a two-state solution. This is the bane of our existence when it comes to this so-called liberal Zionist movement, because they're still trying to convince people that a two-state solution is possible. How is that possible when in a matter of weeks, Netanyahu and his people will control 70% of Gaza's land. And in a very short while, they'll control all of it. And you know how many more people will be dead? Potentially tens, if not hundreds of thousands more. Now we just don't know. You know, the one thing that we really underestimate, because we don't have cameras on the ground, we don't know what's going on in any of these places. How do we know who's actually alive and who isn't? How do we have an accurate account for what's really going on versus what is or isn't going on? We don't know. We're taking a lot of things on faith. As you know, our channel has been very fortunate to be able to interview actual Palestinians in Gaza on the ground under the cover of night, a couple of them in very dangerous, precarious situations by going forward and doing it and letting us know that whatever bullshit we're being sold by corporate media and even a lot of these so-called independent media outlets is not telling the truth about what's going on. Therein lies the reality. The assumption that, well, yeah, we'll just get rid of Netanyahu and Smotrich and Gavir and, you know, and away we go. This is the problem.